Hello, hello. Thank you for coming and checking out my video. If this is your first time here, then welcome. I hope you find something you like. And if you're a repeat offender, I appreciate you very much. My name is Jennifer, and this is Jen the Bookworm. So today I'm bringing a very basic wrap-up of January and a TBR for February. Just kind of let you know where I am on my journey here for reading. So January was actually a really good month for me. I read quite a few books, more than I thought I was going to be able to accomplish in a month's time. And they weren't all small books and novellas and things like that. Some of them were pretty big books, so I was pretty happy with my progress. So for those of you who have been around and have heard me talk about this, I am participating in the A Song of Ice and Fire read-along, and that's been going around BookTube, and started with Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. I read that this month. I enjoyed the read. It was a good read, and I'd give it about a 3.5 to 4. I think 3.5 is what I gave it. Mostly, I only have a small critique that happens more in the beginning and then gets better as it goes. My small critique is the people who are telling me, "Oh, read this guy. His writing is phenomenal. It's transformative. It's all these things." In the beginning, I felt a little like I didn't really think the writing was spectacular. I didn't think it was bad either. But there are places, particularly in the beginning, where he's very kind of plain spoken and not very flowery prose and stuff like that, which I think is perfectly fine. I like Brandon Sanderson. If I like Brandon Sanderson, I'm not saying this being plain spoken and not flowery is a bad thing, because Brandon Sanderson's none of those. He's not very flowery and stuff like that. His prose are very easy to access, and I think that George R. R. Martin's are as well. But it feels like he's telling things in a very straightforward way, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, he'll say something like, "She loves me not. He loves me not. The weather loves me not." Something me not, like he doesn't want to say the word doesn't or does not. He wants to put not at the end of the sentence, and it seems very flowery and then out of place. And then it throws me out of the story. It makes me go, what? What are we talking about here? It's just a small thing, because I either get used to it as time goes, or he stops doing it as time goes, because I think the writing improves through the book. It's the first book. Maybe it was just a little clunky in the beginning, but the writing does improve vastly through the book, and I enjoy the book. I enjoy the storyline. I enjoyed, as an avid fan of the show, I enjoyed seeing the things that were kind of different, or different perspectives in the show that or in the book, that either was portrayed differently in the show, or it was impossible to really get a clear idea of the characters' perspectives when you weren't inside their head like you can be in a book. So I enjoyed where it differed, and had a good time reading it. I also read, or for those of you who caught the mid-month check-in, I joined the Keymark readathon. And so for the readathon, we're supposed to read 5 books and review 5 books. For every book you read that fits the parameters, it's a point. For every review that you give on either Goodreads or Amazon, it's a point. And you can get 3 extra bonus points if one of your books is either an indie, a debut, or 500 pages or more. So you can get 3 extra points if 3 of those 5 books meets one of those 3 criteria. I've read 4 books for it so far. Fear not. It doesn't end yet. It ends on the 6th of February. So they started on the 6th of February and ended it on the 6th of February. And which is the reason why Game of Thrones was not part of my readathon, because I started Game of Thrones the 1st of January, and so I just couldn't add it. I couldn't in good faith say I read this between January 6th and February 6th, because I didn't. But some of the books that I have read for the readathon, I read Fireborn by Rosario Munda. I really, really liked Fireborn, and I'm hoping to go on. It's a trilogy. There's 3 of them, because that's the definition of a trilogy. Anyway, there's 3 books, and I'm hoping to read the 2nd and 3rd book soonish. But I feel like I understand maybe why authors say, or not authors, readers, booktubers say, don't start too many series all at once, because now in December, my Just Do It December, I went and started a bunch of things, and I, getting around to the sequels and the other books in the series seems to be difficult. So, but Fireborn is it's a story about, there's, some politics in this. It's about a land where people were in a caste system, or class system, however you want to put it, where those who were on top were not, were fewer than those who are on the bottom, which is usually the case, and they were cruel to the people on the bottom, and there was a revolution. The revolution happened before the book started. The book started after. So I'm not spoiling anything, but there was a revolution and then a reforming of the government. So we're kind of in the government has been somewhat reformed, but it's still new, and they're still trying to figure out how they are differentiating themselves from the monarch that they had before, and in what ways they're the same, in what ways they're different. And the main character, the main 2 characters of the book, are orphans who are coming up in this society that is supposed to be championing the little guy and giving them opportunities that previously were only given to the monarchy, to the big guy, to the lords and such. So it was a very good book. I read it for the Keymark readathon because it fit the prompt of having an animal companion, because there are dragons and they ride dragons. I'm very excited to see, because they kind of left off at a really good point. So I'm not so much a cliffhanger, so much as they left off at a point that makes me ask what's going to happen next. So I'm hoping to get to that series soon. I also read The Bitter Twins by Jen Williams. And this was a book that I continued, the Winnowing Flame trilogy. I read The 9th Reign in November, and this time I read The Bitter Twins, the 2nd book, and it was a really good book. I did it for Keymark. It fulfilled the prompt of a non-US writer, because she's British, or a female writer, she is a female, or a LGBTQ plus, and I don't know what her orientation is, but she didn't have to fulfill all 3 of those, just one of those. So that was the prompt that I was using for this book. I enjoyed this book. Being the 2nd book in the series, I was a little bit concerned it was going to have some 2nd book syndrome, but I didn't feel that. It did open up the world more, more. I think sometimes in the beginning of a trilogy or in the beginning of a series, their scope is kind of more narrow and it expands as you go. And so this one did a very good expanse of the world, and kind of left you with what more could happen. It was very good. Very much enjoyed it. I also read The Sea of Monsters, the 2nd Percy Jackson book by Rick Riordan. I read that with my daughter. She is still reading it, but it took me a day. I'm a little bit faster than her, but I read that as for the Keymark readathon. The prompt was continuing a series. And I enjoyed it. I had heard that this book was less good than the first book, but I didn't see that. I liked the additional characters. I liked the humor. I liked the action. It was pretty action-packed. My daughter, she reads it. She's reading it, and she laughs and giggles through it, and so it's hitting its mark with her, and its mark with me. I really enjoyed it. Even though I'm not the target demographic, being 46 years old, I still think there's something there for older people, people who are not the target demographic, to get some enjoyment out of it. So I really did enjoy it. If you like middle grade or young adult books, then I think that you might enjoy it if you pick this one up. I also read Malice by John Gwynne. Malice is a book I've been waiting to read for a long time. And I decided I was going to read it in December, and I didn't get to it. So I was happy to see that it fulfilled one of the key mark prompts, having a weapon on the cover, has a big sword on it. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very interesting because I just read Game of Thrones in the same month. I thought it was very interesting. I found some parallels. Like, I feel like John Gwynne was highly influenced by George R.R. Martin. I do not feel like this was a ripoff of a Game of Thrones. I am not at all saying that. It was not a ripoff. It was not a one-for-one. It was not, oh wow, if I read Game of Thrones, I pretty much know what happened here. It's not like that at all. But there are some things that, there's a wolfen, which is kind of like a dire wolf. And one of the characters creates this bond with this wolfen. And there's one of the characters that kind of reminds me of Jon. There's a character that kind of reminds me of a blend of Jon and Bran. There's a character that is being called Kingslayer. There's more, but there's more, but it's not really important. It's just interesting to me, I guess, to be able to so nakedly see the influence. But it was a really good story. Multiple POVs, and there was, what I gather when I'm watching other people who have reviewed this or who are in the process of reading it, they always say, I'm in the beginning and I'm a little confused. And I get that, because I kind of felt that too. It's not confused like I don't know what the author's trying to tell me. It's more confused like I don't understand how these people intersect. They're going to at some point, but I don't understand. In the beginning, they're so spread out, it feels that it's hard to see how they're going to intersect. They do intersect a lot more towards the end of the book than towards the beginning. And the end of the book was very intense and action-packed and really made me go, no, you can't end here. Not in a cliffhanger sense, but I was enjoying it so much. It was very, very fast-paced in the end, and I just wanted it to continue. And I'm hoping that, it will continue with the next book here soon. So I really enjoyed Malice. So those are the 4 books, minus Game of Thrones, the 4 books I read for Keymark so far. I do have another one on the horizon. I did try to read one. I tried to read a book called Lightblade by Zamil Akhtar, and this one would have been an indie book. It satisfied a couple of prompts, indie and something else, and I can't remember the specific prompt I was using it for, but it did not land for me early on. I'm not DNFing the book forever, but I did put it down to read it at a different time. It felt more sci-fi for me than than fantasy, and I was really thought I was getting something more fantasy. But I feel like the author maybe didn't have a very, like, there were some questions that I felt like maybe should have been answered or explained a little earlier on. For instance, and I don't believe this is spoilers, but for instance, the main character was getting a crystal etched, and it kind of felt like it was like a reprogramming of a program, more than, it kind of felt like the character was getting a matrix program reprogrammed for him to overhauled to fit his needs. And then you put the crystal inside of his chest, but up till this point it seemed like he was completely human, but he inserted this into his chest. How does that work? Is he human? Do all humans have crystals in their chests now? Do only specific people need to have that? Then he was able to enter this matrix, this virtual reality, and he said the person who did the etching kind of made it seem like it was a shady deal, like he was getting it done illegally or getting it done illicitly, and then the person kind of screwed it up. But what he made it sound like he took his teenage fantasy pornography virtual reality video, or whatever, virtual reality, and had it reconstructed so that it would teach him how to make a light blade, which seems like a lightsaber. It needs to be constructed. And so his pubescent fantasy person now knows how to construct a lightsaber or light blade. And all of that was just a little too much without further explanation or exploration of the character. I didn't care about the character yet. The author didn't give me anything to care about the character up to this point. And so it was really just throwing zany things at me, because the way that the program was done kind of screwed everything up. And there were things like teddy bears riding on sharks, swimming around, singing a song above a threshold of a cabin. Things like that being thrown at me, and I don't understand why. It seemed gratuitous, and I don't care about the character yet. In contrast, I read a book back in December called Unsold by Will White, and part of the Cradle series. And these are not huge books, and they have what I feel is like a little bit of sci-fi mixed in with the fantasy. But when we start the book, immediately it tells us, we're in the point of view of the main character, who's a little kid in the beginning, and he's going to do this test that's going to tell him the track for the rest of his life, and how excited he is. You can feel it. You can see he's excited about this. He says what he would prefer it to be. He really wanted to be a soulsmith, but if he's something else, or a blacksmith or whatever, if he's something else, it's fine, but this is what he really wanted to be, like his mom, and his excitement. And then he fails the test that can't be failed. And then you see the disappointment, and you see, it fast forwards in his life a little bit, and you see how he is a embarrassment to his family, but his family is trying to, whatever. You see his emotions, you feel for him, because you care about him. And the author was able, within a chapter, within the intro and the first part of the chapter, to tell me why I should care, and that I should care in that book. I feel like that was missing from Lightblade. So at the point that I ended up putting the book down, I still wasn't clear on why I should care about the main character, other than that he's the main character, and I needed more than that. I will try and pick it up again when I'm in a different headspace for something a little more sci-fi. because it feels to me like it was sci-fi with some fantasy splashed in rather than fantasy with some sci-fi splashed in. So I'll try it again another time, but it didn't work for me this time. So that is a book that I attempted to read this month but did not achieve. So I had a couple of days left after I got to this point, and I was really trying to find something that I could read for key mark, but I decided to take a little bit of a break and read a nonfiction book that I had purchased recently and really wanted to read, and it's called Big Girl, How I Gave Up on Dieting and Got a Life by Kelsey Miller. Now, I read this book because it's something that would be interesting to me. It's about Kelsey Miller's struggle with yo-yo dieting through her whole life, which I can relate to, and how she found intuitive eating. And intuitive eating is a program, which I'm going to paraphrase probably badly, there's no bad foods, there's no good foods, there's you have permission to eat whatever it is you want to eat, so long as it's something you actually want to eat. To pay attention to your body's cues on hunger, telling you need to eat something, and then also to pay attention to your body's cues on satiation, saying, okay, you're full. And to disengage from watching television or your computer or your phone or reading something or doing anything else, to just focus on eating, tasting the food, feeling the food, allowing your body to tell you when you're done or what you crave. And whatever you crave is not wrong. You can eat whatever you want, but you need to stop when your body tells you you're full. And when you're like watching TV and eating, it's very easy just to, hand to mouth and not to think about what your body's telling you. Your body might be saying, hey, whoa, we're done here. And you're not. You're just not thinking about it. You're not paying attention. That's kind of the basis of intuitive eating. So this was this person's journey about she kind of wrote about like a year's worth of time where she was engaging in this intuitive eating and how it affected her, what pitfalls she went through, what problems arise, what successes she had, so on and so forth. I found it to be an interesting read. It was only like a 7 or 8 hour read or listen on Audible, which is what I did. And it was personally interesting to me. It's something I've been checking out, intuitive eating, but the intuitive eating books that I was reading read like a textbook, and that's boring. This person's book did not read like a textbook. It was very interesting, and she had a very good comedic voice to tell her story. So I really appreciated that. If you're interested in intuitive eating or interested in stopping a diet lifestyle or yo-yo dieting or whatever, or just curious, I would check out the book. Then after that, I decided to pick up another Dresden File book. It's been a while since I've read Dresden File books, and I have been missing it. So I have had an idea that maybe I could read this for key mark, but it's not a debut book. It's not over 500 pages, and it's not an indie book, so I'd be missing out on a point somewhere, so I'm not going to use this for key mark, but I did decide I'd started it. Why not finish it? They're usually fairly small, and then I'll start my key mark book in February. So I'm reading Small Favor by Jim Butcher, and I'm about halfway through it now. I am hoping to finish it today. After I get done filming this, I have a lot of housework on the agenda today. I'm hoping to put on my audiobook and do my housework and finish it up today within January. But if I don't, then I'll finish it up the first couple of days of February. Not a big deal. But I'm hoping to get it all finished today. So far, I'm really enjoying it. I don't really have a lot to say about it other than it's more of the same. It's really good. I love James Marsters as the narrator, and go Harry. I don't know. I have read some people reviewing the Dresden books and talking about how sexist it is and how all he talks about is boobs and how cute girls are or whatnot. This is not a problem that I have. I don't think it's the author being sexist. I think it's the character himself. This is a character trait of Harry. He's a chauvinist, and he says he's a chauvinist. He has a code of conduct, which is you don't hit girls. And so anybody who picks on a girl or wants to hit a girl or whatever, he's going to step in and he's going to try to help out. Sometimes he gets his foot stepped on for doing that, because he has a contact within the Chicago PD who doesn't much need to be rescued and doesn't enjoy when he does that. But, that creates a back and forth there. I don't think that's a problem with the piece. I don't think that's a problem with the character. I think that's a character trait that makes him interesting. And yes, he does seem to notice. You're in his mind. You're in his POV exclusively. So when he looks at a girl, he sees her profile. He sees her body. He sees breasts, whatever he sees, what he sees. And the character, does, it is described to us from his point of view. But again, I feel like that's more of a Harry thing rather than the book is sexist. I think Harry is sexist a bit, or not sexist, but he is overly preoccupied with women. But spoiler alert, he's not getting any, so maybe that's just how he is. But I'm not offended by that. I don't find that to be a problem. I laugh at him. I think it's funny. So getting a little more of the same in that sense, but I like it. I like him. I like the book. I like the narrator. I'm enjoying it. So that's what I've done for January. And I sort of, going to rush through a little bit what I'm going to do for February so that I don't make this hour-long video. So February TBR, I'm going to continue on with the Keymark readathon. I've got one more book to do. And the book that I've chosen for that is The Legend of Blackjack by A.R. Whitman. I have heard nothing but good things about this book. I have heard lots of people, even way before the Keymark readathon. I mean, I've been hearing about this book from Scott the Bald Booktuber. I think, I don't want to say his name if he hasn't read it and reviewed it. But I feel like there's quite a few booktubers that I have seen reviewing this book, and they all have great things to say about it. So it was on my radar. I wanted to pick it up. But it doesn't hurt that one of the people who owns the Discord and is running this readathon is the author himself. And I've seen a lot of other people pick up this book to satisfy a prompt within this readathon, and they all seem to really have positive things to say about it. So I'm intrigued. I actually have already picked it up and have already read like most of the first chapter or prologue or chapter. I don't know. Most of the first bit of it, and it caught me up right away. I am caught up in this kid. I am caught up in the way that it's written. So I really don't think that this book will be difficult for me to get through. And I predict that it will be a very good book. Additionally, I will be continuing the A Song of Ice and Fire read-along, and I will be picking up A Clash of Kings by George R. R. Martin. I have read half of this book, but I have not finished this book. I read a book and a half when I was trying to read the series way before I joined YouTube. So I've read about half of it, and I don't really remember. I remember like one or two things, but I don't really remember all the ways in which it differed from the movie or from the TV show. And I'm excited to delve into it to see how it's different and to continue the discussion with a bunch of other people. I'm really enjoying that aspect of the read-along. So I am going to pick that up. The next book that I'm going to be picking up is The Poison Song by Jen Williams. This is the third book. Third? That doesn't work. This is the third book in the Winnowing Flame trilogy. And honestly, I'm picking it up because I'm enjoying this trilogy so much that I want to get it finished. It's not the highest priority for me in February, so if a book needs to get skipped, I might skip that one and read it in March, but it is on the list. And I'll explain why I say that in a minute. I decided to pick up a couple of romances because it's February and Valentine's Day and whatever. I had a couple romances that I had seen on other people's booktubes, and I thought enough of them to pick them up. So I thought this might be the month to fit them in. One of them is called City of Thorns by C.N. Crawford, and I can't remember what the synopsis of it is, but it was like a fantasy or a paranormal romance kind of book. And also All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. And I hear this is a book about somebody who she moves into like a townhouse or to a duplex or something, and she kind of has a grumpy landlord, and they kind of hit it off, and there's a romance. And so it was interesting when the person described it to me. I read the synopsis. It seemed interesting. I picked it up. So we'll see. It might be my romance for February. Another one that I picked up, it's kind of a romance. It's kind of a cozy fantasy, which I've been kind of interested in finding out more cozy fantasies after reading Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. So this one is called The House Witch by Matthew Wolfe. And apparently it's about a person who takes on a cooking job for a house. And he's kind of surly and kind of grumpy, but really what he is he's just kind of distancing himself because he's actually a witch, and it's supposed to be a cozy fantasy, and so I am interested in cozy fantasy, so that's on the agenda. Also, I really want to continue with the challenge that I set for myself last year in November, the Read It or Delete It challenge, where I kind of go through and I draw at random some books that have made its way onto my Kindle, clogging up my Kindle, that I've not read, and I want to either read these books or delete these books. So I choose a book at random, I draw one out, I read it for a chapter. I try anyway, a whole chapter, to determine whether or not I'm going to like this book. And if I do like it, then I continue reading it. If I don't like it, I delete it. Get rid of it altogether. Don't want it on my Kindle. So there's a weekend in February where my partner is taking off for the weekend. And so it feels like a good time to maybe try to do a read or delete it, maybe one or two attempts at that. So this is a small month, and this is a big TBR, so we'll see what gets shuffled, if anything gets shuffled around. Maybe I won't like any of the books that I draw from Read It or Delete It, but if I delete it, I feel like that's a success because I got rid of the books that I didn't want to read anyway. So my biggest priorities is the Clash of Kings and The Legend of Blackjack. After that, everything else is kind of subject to be moved around and reprioritized. But that's it. That's my list. That's what I'm hoping to get done in February. And if you have an idea of what you're going to be reading in February, I'd be interested in knowing that. You could leave that in the comments below. If you have any comments about the books that I read in January or the ones that I'm going to read in February, if you've read them and you think that I'll like this one more than that one, particularly because I might be reprioritizing things, maybe you go on there and say, oh, but don't leave this one off. Or All Roads Lead Here was really great. I read it. Don't leave that one off. If you got to leave something off, don't let it be that one. Or whatever. Leave me a comment down below. I would appreciate any kind of discussion that we could have or interaction we could have regarding books. I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that if you did, that you will leave me a like or subscribe. If you subscribe to my channel, it really helps me out, and it's free to do. And it lets me know that you enjoy content like this, or that you're enjoying any content that I put out, and lets me know I'm on the right track. So I would appreciate a sub if you haven't already. And with that, I thank you very much for the time you've come and spent with me, and I apologize that this is a little bit long, but I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.